Next on the news, an attack on life on the state Senate floor. Catholics in New York rallying against an assisted suicide bill.
Supporters are trying to tell you that this is death with dignity. But life is inherently valuable regardless of conditional prognosis.
Times Square was filled with the faithful over the weekend as Catholics celebrated Pentecost in the crossroads of the world. Plus, it was a moment in papal history. Now, 1 month after becoming the first American pope, we look back at everything the Holy Father has done so far. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. They are calling it the last stand against assisted suicide. The New York Alliance Against Assisted Suicide, along with the state's Catholic Conference, filling the Capitol building in Albany and standing outside the Senate chamber, hoping to make their voices heard. The two pro-life groups obtained information that indicates the Senate could hold a vote on the Medical Aid in Dying Act immediately, if not later this week. New York's bishops have long opposed the bill, saying it violates the sanctity of life. They worry it will usher in a dangerous era in the Empire State. Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan also warned his flock about the act.
This legislation is wrong on so many levels. To quote the late Pope Francis, who showed the world how to live and die with hope, euthanasia and assisted suicide are a defeat for all. We are called never to abandon those who are suffering, never to give up, but caring and loving to restore hope. Supporters are trying to tell you that this is death with dignity. But life is inherently valuable regardless of conditional prognosis. And we have the capability to offer real dignity through palliative and hospice care, providing all medical, emotional, and spiritual care. You've heard of slippery slopes, right? Assisted suicide is a big slide. Look at Canada, where the 2016 law is continually being expanded. What today is tolerated or allowed will become expected or the responsible thing to do, especially for vulnerable populations, thought to be a burden to others. How will coverage of long-term care be decided when there is an option of ending it all? And here's the craziest thing of all. In our state, as in the rest of the country, we are facing a serious suicide crisis. What message are we sending? It's chilling.
This legislation is moving quickly, so Catholics need to act now. If you haven't already, you need to make your opposition heard. Go to nyscatholic.org now. From there, you'll go to the Action Center and click on Latest Action Alerts. There, you can learn more about this bill and send a pre-written message to lawmakers. You can hear even more of Bishop Brennan's thoughts on the dangers of assisted suicide in the latest episode of his podcast, Big City Catholics. During his conversation with Father Joseph Zwasta, a Diocese of Brooklyn priest who serves as the academic dean of Pope St. John the 23rd National Seminary, Bishop Brennan reaffirmed the sanctity of life from birth until natural death. To hear the full episode, just go to podcast.dioceseofbrooklyn.org. You can also search for Big City Catholics on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The bill passed the Assembly for the first time in April with an 81-67 vote. While we're waiting to hear its status, reports say 25 senators currently support it, but it needs 32 votes to pass. If it does pass, it would then go to the desk of Governor Kathy Hochul, who has not publicly stated her position. According to some of the latest numbers, 72% of New Yorkers favor the bill. Supporters argue it offers a choice for terminally ill patients. They point to states like Oregon, who have had such laws for decades without coercion issues. Meanwhile, the Church's teaching remains consistent regardless of public opinion. The Catholic Conference, along with disability rights groups, say coercion of vulnerable groups is a huge risk for the bill. They also point to the act's undermining the sanctity of life and its lack of sufficient safeguards, like a mandatory waiting period. Instead of assisted suicide, they advocate for life-affirming alternatives like enhanced palliative care. To read more about the Church's stance on assisted suicide and to keep up with the latest developments, be sure to stick with Currents News and the tablet. Remember, the Church's stance is grounded in the belief that true compassion accompanies individuals through suffering rather than eliminating the sufferer. Faith was on fire in the crossroads of the world. At least 300 parishioners from St. Pancras Parish in Glendale gathering in Times Square to celebrate Pentecost Sunday. The parish's faith community, called Fuego de Dios, spent 3 hours blessing visitors to the popular New York City spot using holy water, blessed oils, and relics from the parish like the bone fragments of St. Stephen. The night ended with the faithful in Times Square praying for their home parish and for Pope Leo XIV. Meantime, the pontiff celebrated Pentecost Sunday with pilgrims from more than 100 countries. Pope Leo joining close to 70,000 faithful for Mass in St. Peter's Square, where pilgrims were also celebrating the jubilee of ecclesial movements, associations, and new communities. In his homily, the pontiff explained how the power of the Holy Spirit can help in personal relationships and overcoming fear, and spoke about how charismatic movements should engage in dialogue to avoid divisions. This Sunday also marked 1 month since Cardinal Robert Prevost became Pope Leo XIV. Since he first stepped out on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the Chicago native was fully prepared and wasted no time.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
It all started with that, Pope Leo XIV's first words to the world in Italian, "Peace be with all of you." And the 267th pontiff hit the ground running. On his first full day as the Holy Father, the first American pope celebrated his first Mass in the Sistine Chapel with the cardinals of the conclave, greeting them in English.
Through the ministry of Peter, you have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission. And I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me as we continue as a church, as a community of friends of Jesus, as believers, to announce the good news, to announce the gospel.
Pope Leo's first Sunday blessing from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica was met with thunderous applause. And in his first Vatican address since his election, the Pope issued a call for peace.
In today's dramatic scenario of a third world war being fought piecemeal, as Pope Francis said, I too turn to the world's leaders with an ever-timely appeal. Never again war.
The Holy Father called for a ceasefire in Gaza, as well as humanitarian aid and the release of hostages, and peace in Ukraine. Soon after, he spoke on the phone with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He also had a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, urging him to make a gesture that would promote peace. On the day of his installation, Pope Leo met Zelensky and also sat down with Vice President J.D. Vance. A week later, Pope Leo went to the Basilica of St. John Lateran, which is the cathedral of the Diocese of Rome, to formally take his seat as the Bishop of Rome. At the end of the celebration, the Pope appeared at the Basilica's balcony to greet those waiting outside and to deliver a message.
Vivere la nostra fede, specialmente durante questo anno di giubileo, cercando la speranza, però cercando di essere noi stessi testimonianza che offre la speranza al mondo, un mondo che soffre tanto dolore per le guerre, la violenza, la povertà.
The pontiff has visited St. Mary Major to pray before the Salus Populi Romani, the protector of the Roman people, and visit the tomb of Pope Francis. And like his predecessor, Pope Leo is giving women a greater role in the church. His first high-level appointment in the Roman Curia is Sister Tiziana Merletti, who will serve as secretary of the Dicastery for Consecrated Life. Pope Leo jumped right into the Jubilee celebrations, welcoming Eastern Rite Catholics to the Vatican and closing out the Jubilee of families, children, grandparents, and the elderly. The world is still waiting to see where Pope Leo will go for his first international papal trip. Experts have argued he will choose South America, since some nations there have gone decades without a papal visit. Also over the weekend, Bishop Brennan visited a Queen's Church for their Centennial celebration. The the shepherd of the Brooklyn Diocese blessing the flock at Immaculate Conception Church in Astoria, which for the last 100 years, according to their pastor, has celebrated 21,000 baptisms, 22,000 first communions and confirmations, 6,500 marriages, and 15,000 funerals. During the bilingual Mass, Bishop Brennan congratulated Immaculate Conception on the milestone, saying the works of the Holy Spirit are revealed in their church. And finally tonight, students in Queens learned how to care for God's creation by coming together for a butterfly release in their school's courtyard. As part of the 6th through 8th grade curriculum, kids at Immaculate Conception Catholic Academy in Jamaica Estates helped the butterflies grow their wings, nurturing them from their larval stage in designated classrooms. When they emerged from their cocoons, the students fed them sugar water and orange slices, understanding from their teachers the value of protecting God's creatures. When the butterflies were ready to be released, the school gathered outside to watch them take flight. What a cool class. Before we go, a quick programming note. Currents News is taking a break the week of the 4th of July, but don't worry, there's still lots of great programming. Just some of the highlights. We take a look at Pope Leo's journey from Chicago to Rome. Plus, as schools let out across the Diocese of Brooklyn, we are celebrating Catholic education. And a deep dive into the soon-to-be first millennial saint, Blessed Carlo Acutis. We'll be back on Monday, July 7th. That is this Currents News Update. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.